Hi, I'm Xian. I'm here today at Rise Climbing and I've set the technique circuit and I'm going to coach you through with some of my best tips on how to execute the technique. So the first one we're going to look at today is standing up from a tripod position. It's literally the bread and butter of climbing. It's so classic. You want to master this really well because that will give you a really strong foundation from the beginning of your climbing all the way to, burden of dreams. Here we have a red climb where we've got pretty juggy holds and it's set up for you to practice the technique in sort of the most classical form. On each hold, we want to weight distribute to a tripod, which means even weight throughout both feet, one hand, and being able to take one hand off. This is a really stable position and it allows you to stand up out of it and reach the next hold in relative balance. And what we really wanted to emphasize here today is standing up. So I like to call this the technique with no name in climbing because it's so sort of obvious sometimes that we forget to remember to do it. So climbing looks really complicated, but a lot of it is actually quite simple. What we're trying to do is start from a squat position and stand up and reach for the next hold. And on the wall, it's just a more complicated version of it. All right, let's have a look. All right, so here we've got a classic tripod position. What's really important here is that the weight is on the feet. I can actually feel the holds underneath my big toe. I can feel my legs a little bit engaged. My shoulders in a nice neutral position. We're not sort of sagging or falling off. Nice and stable in a squat. And then I'm going to stand up and reach for the next hold. And what's really lovely about this technique is that it allows me to access my full body length. We want to be thinking about extending through our ankle, knees, and hip joint. So that way, you're almost finishing in a tiptoe position, and that is what allows you to access your max reach. Okay, so now we're going to talk about a few common mistakes so you know what to watch out for or to catch yourself doing it. And also, more importantly, we understand why they are mistakes so we don't do it. Let's start by explaining why the starting posture is really important. For us to stand up, we need to be reasonably upright and for the weight to be on the front of our feet. What happens when we're not in this position is that instead of pushing up to the next hold, we will push ourselves out of the wall. Let me show you what I mean. Okay. So here I'm just starting in like a not active position. The weight is through my midfoot, not the front of my foot. And you can see it's a different position. Because the weight is in my midfoot rather than the front of my foot, I'm hanging a lot lower on the shoulders. And now, if I were to push and extend my knees, hips, and ankles, I'm going to be pushing myself out of the wall, which doesn't give me any height. So it looks obvious when I'm showing it to you like this, but what usually it looks like in climbing is that the setup is poor. You push out, and then it doesn't work, and then instead we compensate by pulling with the arms. And this classic shape of hips out, chest in, is a sign that you're not doing it in the most efficient way. So the correction is very simple. Every time you place your foot on, get the weight onto the front of your foot. It will naturally bring you into a much more upright squat, a much more neutral position in the shoulder, which will allow you to push directly upwards. Another common mistake that people make is they twist in too soon and get close to the wall before standing up. The problem with this is that if you start close to the wall, then the only way is out. So again, you push yourself out of the wall. And the other problem is that when you twist in really close to the wall, we are folding ourselves really flat, like an origami. And from that, it's really hard to straighten out. It's like standing up from a deep squat is a lot harder than standing up from sort of a medium squat. Right, this is how it looks like. So if I were to twist all the way in to get close to the wall before standing up, you can see now my leg is completely folded over and I'm working really hard in my core just to keep myself on the wall. So when I now try to push up through the legs, I'm coming from a deep squat with my right leg, which makes it a lot harder. And also, because I came from inside the wall, I have to work really hard to stay into the wall, but my natural tendency is to come out. It's actually much more effective to stay neutral, push up, and twist at the end. Because that way we finish the move closest to the wall, which is why we twist in, and that gives us maximum length. Okay, so now you know what to watch out for and how to practice the stand-up technique well. I've also set a much harder climb on the steep wall through the woodies. And the reason for setting that is I wanted to show you that this technique is really fundamental to all of climbing, and it will keep coming up over and over again, whether it's an easier climb or a harder climb. And what happens when it's a harder climb is that it really forces us to refine the movement and be really precise with how we execute it, because when the holds are small, we don't have as much margin for error. But fundamentally, it is the same technique, raised to a higher level. Ugh. Okay, so tripod, stand up. Tripod, stand up. Tripod, stand up. Okay, this is a rock over, to be fair. Tripod, stand up. Tripod, stand up. Ooh. All right, so there you have it, everything you need to know about climbing. All right, so let's recap what we talked about, how to stand up from a tripod position. 1, make sure the weight is on the front of your foot. 2, position yourself so that you can push upwards, not outwards. Extend in the hips, knees, and ankles. Things not to do is leave the weight at your midfoot, and also do not twist all the way in close to the wall before standing up. And last of all, this is a super important technique, so practice, practice, practice. It really pays off to get this really good. Okay, so the vlogs are gonna be up till 13th of July, so plenty of time to come here and master the skills we talked about. Get here. And if you enjoyed the tips, you found them useful, check out my book, Smooth. It's all about climbing technique and, well, that's why it says on the cover, help you to climb smooth.